Hey, dude.
What's up, man?
Ha, good to have you back. 200 some odd episodes later. Good to see you again.
A lot has changed. Yeah, it's great to see you too, man.
Let me tell people who we're talking to right now. I had a rough climbing session today, and I tried to open the can, and my forearms weren't letting me.
No. Well, hey, cheers. I got some whiskey going, so
Hell yeah,
cheers to you.
cheers to you, sir. Okay. Folks, welcome to the show. Another episode of Ponytails. I am with Kevin Flavin today, and man, I just saw you at the reunion, and it was so refreshing to see you, brother, in person. It's just cool. I know you're a big fan of the show. You're always commenting. You're always giving us good feedback. So it's always good to talk to someone who really enjoys what we're doing. But for people who are listening, Kevin sold for 4 summers as part of the Eagle Blitz organization from 2014 to 2017. He is an alumni of the Texas A&M University. Gig 'em. Love people from that school. You guys are like tough people. Hometown is Houston. You're currently in the eye care technology business. We'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. Your favorite squirrels, I will persist until I succeed. I love that, my guy. And just so you guys know, so Kevin is a business analyst for GPN Technologies. Their entire mission is just advancing eye care businesses through data-driven insights. In other words, he is an external consultant for them and their largest client, where he's pretty much just doing data analytics and visualization while at the same time assisting the client's needs in their marketing, every quarter, and making sure that they're being the best they can be for eye care providers who span all through the country. So that's pretty awesome. Kevin was also 4 summers with Southwestern. He earned the Southwestern Bronze certification in both sales and recruiting as a college guy, so that's pretty badass. He had personal sales production of over $100,000 over 4 summers. He further honed his sales management and coaching skills by attending over 300 hours of advanced sales and leadership training while in school. Man, that's sick. So, welcome to the show, dude.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Things have changed.
Things have changed a lot, man. Yeah. So 2.5 years later, something like that, since episode 17. So yeah, hard to believe it's been that long, but a lot of good life stuff just going on, and kind of on the heels of the reunion, which was a blast, just getting a chance to see everyone. So good to be back. Caught the Southwestern Kool-Aid all over again once I was up in Nashville, and yeah, it was like, I need to reach back out to Andres and get back on the show. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude, so exciting. And to be honest with you, I sometimes like think in my head, like, is it? It's a self-conscious thing, maybe, of being a creator or trying to create something, but you always get paranoid of if people care or if you're doing the right thing. And at the same time, you get some encouraging things, and having people back on that we had so early on, who like believed in us back then, and have been supporting us since then, like you. It really is rewarding to think back, because I can be my own worst critic, and sometimes I'm pretty hard on myself, and then I go, oh, wait a minute, we've been on the air for like 3 years. Most podcasts don't even get this far quickly, this quick, like I forget to be thankful of really how far we've come.
Yeah.
So thank you for reminding me, because I need that. I need that sometimes.
You're welcome.
Appreciate
it. Always here for you, man.
I love that. Hey, bro, let me ask you. So what is this analyst stuff? Like, this is so cool. I feel like this is the kind of the world that I don't know much about. And like,
Sure.
Tell me about, like, what are you doing? So, business analyst for GPN. What does your day to day look like? This, like, it feels like it's such a cool, like, grown up job.
It feels that way. And in light of what meeting I just got out of a couple hours ago, it's definitely feel a little bit more grown up than a couple years back when we last chatted. But kind of lead you into how I landed here. It was actually pretty cool. So from 2021 through into the following year, into 2022, I guess, was kind of in the thought process of getting my MBA. Frankly, just like was hitting a lot of plateaus with with work, and was ready to advance my career a little bit. So applied to some different programs, took the GMAT, all that stuff, which I'm so glad to have that part of my grad school experience behind me. But in light of that, landed into a few different programs, and then ultimately Texas A&M. We have a satellite program in Houston on the west side of town. So I shadowed a few different programs, and ultimately, like, the one that just felt the most me was Texas A&M yet again. So I'll have 2 degrees from Texas A&M in 10 months time. And part of the beauty of this program is it's Fridays and Saturdays every other weekend, and everyone in the program has a full-time job. So I'm in this program with people who are professionals who are deeper into their career as compared to a full-time MBA program. So our average age is like 33, average age or average experience is like 9 years or thereabouts. Whereas for a full-time program, it would be like 26, 27. So it's,
Mm.
we have just an older cohort, and I'm reaping the benefits of that just because I'm with people who are deeper into the throes of their career, have more management experience. And in light of, the story of as to how I got where I am with GPN, one of my classmates is actually my boss. So he caught wind that I was looking for a new career path, and it basically dropped a line with some of his superiors, and it was a pretty like challenging. I think there were 5 rounds of the interview process because they objectively wanted to make sure I was the material that they needed for this position. And since it was kind of an internal referral, they had to objectively ensure it was the right candidate. So I reached out to Pete, my boss, and he was able to get me into this position. And a few months later, we're working on some very dense mathematical material. So 2 years ago, or excuse me, 2 hours ago, I was on a call regarding multiple regression, and dealing with certain levers that eye care providers can be pulling to help maximize their revenue for their practice. And it's all based on like data, which is what our company is responsible for, is like housing hundreds of thousands of lines of data for all these transactions around the country. And yeah, that's my job
Wow.
now, handling a lot of external relationships with our client, which is probably my favorite part of the job. I love the mathematical challenges, but I get to scratch the itch of the sales side that I learned with Southwestern, of working with people, being able to read them, ask really good questions to get to the bottom of what they really need and want and desire for their company. And now I'm reaping the benefits of finding that middle ground between analysis and sales, and it's been a great experience. I'm only 3 months into the company, but I work fully remote, so I have a
Oh,
20-second
sweet.
commute, and it's outstanding. I just moved into a new apartment a couple months back, and just a lot of good life stuff going on.
Dude, that's awesome. Oh,
Thanks,
I'm
man.
hearing an echo for some reason.
Are
Oh,
you? Can
am I still in your ears?
hmm
That's interesting. Um, anyway, dude, I had a couple questions. Did they ask you about your Southwestern experience while you were interviewing, or did it come up?
um, That's a good question. I don't think so. It's a very data heavy and like math and software development heavy company. So I had to lean more in that direction from, more grad school experiences and, some of my undergrad.
I
So,
see.
but that to say, even though I didn't necessarily talk about it, I'm reaping the benefits of it now because I'm able to
Yeah.
establish really good rapport with our client and be able to build on those relationships, which is now second nature for anyone who has sold a summer or more. Yeah, they kind of know
Yeah.
how to make that happen. So
So, but like, have you? It's interesting because when I think of a person, I always ask this or try to ask of people who go into like a more logistical or logical engineer type, or like where people who are a little bit more logical minded tend to
mhm,
work, to see how they feel about like what we did. Because, for example, Andrew Benson is a buddy of mine. He works for Google, and I always love
mhm.
talking about his story because it was like um, supposed to be like a 15-minute interview and ended up being 45 minutes because they just happened to ask about his Southwestern experience. But they were so mind blown because they're kind
Right.
of like more logical thought process. So doing this job would have been, anyways. So that's what I was asking. Like this,
No, but
if it ever comes up and they're like blown away.
it is really cool though. In light of the experience I had with 4 summers, I've shared stories in time. With some of my classmates. We're about a year in now, so it's I would say those closest to me and my cohort, mainly like my teammates that I've had up to this point, and like just some of my closer friends, they've learned more about the whole deal of selling books door to door. And to this day, like it blows their mind. They're like 80 hours a week, like what as a college kid. But then not only that, like just some of the stories I've shared with them about like the hilarity of what happens on the book field and all of
Yeah,
that.
dude.
And they're just one of my closest buddies, he was just like, I'm envious to it. And he mentioned this to me while we were sharing a beer at a brewery nearby. And he told me, he's like, that experience is going to serve you so well because I didn't have that until I was like 30 plus.
Yeah.
And what was really cool is like I remember having an internal conversation with myself years ago when I was selling books. I was like, I want someone to tell me that. And to have that come to fruition in a very real way with a close friend who's now a classmate, like that was pretty cool.
Yeah. I agree with that. We I think it was Jake Swenson we were just talking to or somebody. And it was that same what you just said came up where it's like it's not that Southwestern is the only place you learn that. You actually will learn that through life experiences, but you have to have enough experiences to learn them. So
Mhm.
usually most people don't learn some of that stuff until 30s, 40s, 50s. But with Southwestern, what it does is it puts you in front of so many different kind of people because it's everybody's different. So the number of experiences you need to like develop those skills is in a microcosm delivered
Yeah.
to you in 3 months. And so it
It's an
sharpens
incubator,
you.
right?
Yeah.
It's an incubator where you
Yeah.
grow so fast, or a microwave. People have used that analogy before too, where
Yeah.
you just you learn so much so fast. And uh, in light of that, I think the one of the beautiful things of my experience in grad school, and then just with other hobbies, and things in my life that I've tried to pursue in my 20s, especially, and we've talked about this on the last episode, but it's just like you learn how to just grow through the beginnings and just like the sucking part of it to really maximize and become more proficient at whatever you're trying to pursue. And I
Yeah.
think that
Yes.
was one of the biggest things from an incubation standpoint from selling books, how to ascend that learning curve. And I'm still in the midst of that with my new job. I switched from commercial insurance into the tech space, and I'm having to rely on basically high school coding experience to try and speak a common language with our software developers, which a lot of that is outdated, and when you don't use it, you lose it. So 12 years later, having not been in high school and having any coding experience since then, it's like it's hard to draw on that. But the reason I was hired is because of other skill sets outside of that, and I attribute a lot of that personal growth to Southwestern and being able to manage relationships and learn quickly.
Yeah, dude. Adaptability, right? Because intelligence is like being able to take something and understanding it fast, but adaptability is being able to use that knowledge to then adapt. Because like the thing is, like we didn't learn every single experience. Like we didn't. There's things that are going to happen in our lives after we sell books that are still going to be like probably harder and much more challenging to figure out. But what it did give us is the tools to be like the Swiss Army knife, right, of solving problems. So even if it's like a problem we've never seen before, we can still go back to like the principles of like, all right, three positives,
Figure it
right?
out.
Or what can we control, what can we not? Like the principles carry you through any problem versus like it doesn't solve every problem. It just helps you go through. Cool stuff.
I
Um,
totally agree.
Second question I wanted to ask you is because you had mentioned often on the show, you said the phrase earlier, asking people the right questions is something that you learn. A lot of people mention that on here, but I've never really like dug in to ask them for specific examples of what you mean by that. So can you share set like what when you're talking to a client, what are some questions that you've learned to ask that are kind of like the questions, you know what I'm saying? What do you mean by good questions, I guess is what I'm asking.
Oh man, we could spend a while on this one, and I'd have to maybe provide a little bit more clarity as to the types of questions I would be asking in a business setting. But typically in a Southwestern environment, when you're sitting down with a family, you're asking questions that you already know the answer to. A lot of times in this line of work, you have to know how to read the person to know, is this really what you want or is this what you think you want, right? And how to pry a little bit further and say, and on the back end of this is I have to report back to software developers internally to ensure that everything that I'm bringing from the client side to the software developers is crystal clear, right? Because if it's not, then it creates a lot of back and forth, right? So, and some of this I'll concede, like I'm learning a lot, especially in the first 3 months that I've been here, uh, where there's not a ton of questions quite yet that I've been able to ask directly that relate more to the software developers. It's more so my boss has taught me in certain cases. A good example is like what is done. When is this project complete? When can
Mm,
we put it in production and move on and have it ready for the client, have that be readily available to them. So hopefully I'm answering your question, but a lot of it is dependent upon the setting and knowing how to read those people. And I think having the calmness, I think a lot of people can get flustered when people or like when the subject of you asking that question may not be very clear on what you're asking. For me, it's being able to take a step back and read, okay, I can tell that didn't work. Let's try a different direction and ensure that we're crystal clear on this. And I think
mm.
that's maybe the underlying thought there is not necessarily asking good questions, but just being very crystal clear in my communication and ensuring that every step of the way I'm covering everything I can to ensure that their deliverable is as good as it can be.
So you're saying asking questions to clear communication
Mhm,
in the name of clear communication, and
mhm,
that's fair. So because what's the quote? The biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it existed in the first place, or something like that. Like
mhm.
because what you
I
think,
like that.
oh, they got it, or oh, I get it, and you're not being honest with yourself that there's maybe something that you don't get or that you're not clear on, that by asking bluntly or just asking tactfully, hey, is this what you mean, saves the time, saves the, yeah, that's great, man, good
So
shit. You
said
did answer my
differently,
question.
yeah, said differently though, a lot of times when you're sitting down with a family selling books, it's a lot of qualitative questions. You're asking,
Yeah.
so what's your favorite subject, right? How'd y'all do last year in school? Here, it's more so very concrete. You have to have something that is tangible to then bring back to our internal team. So it is a different style, but I would say the awareness that I learned of selling books and knowing how to lean in with particular questions. And we always talked about like the funnel of like you want to start with most broad, then become more and more specific as you go along. That still applies in a career like this where all of those things, and I'm kind of realizing this is a direction I didn't think we'd take on the show, which I really enjoy. But those are things that I think inherently over
Thanks.
12,000 cold calls, like I was able to learn and refine before I even, pursued my professional career, right?
Mm,
So all of those little tidbits of things I've learned over selling books, I think still apply to this day.
yeah, that's dope, bro. So you 3 months in, let me ask you this: what do you, what's the ceiling, like, or what's the north star for you?
So we're still trying to figure that out because it's a smaller company. There's only 50 of us. We're nationwide, and the beauty of it is there's not much of a ceiling because the projects that I can undertake apply to many different client bases. So within a consulting capacity, I would be more of like a product owner or product manager. Right now, I'm kind of riding shotgun with my boss and classmate, who is the product manager for our client, and he's trying to groom me into more his position. And then from there, it would be more of like a VP position, and seeing
Wow,
what other angles I might be able to pursue. So
cool.
it's yeah, that remains to be seen. And I'm excited because the prior two companies I've been with, I had a ceiling that was directly where I was at. There was no, it was the glass ceiling that I couldn't get through. And now I've got a lot more runway created. And I attribute a lot of that to going back to school. And um, it sucks. This is part of like I'll call it like the American society that we all live in. is that sometimes you need those extra three letters after your name, even though you may have had the skill set before. You need that credibility of going back to school to prove that you have that capacity and ability to pursue that position. So I think, and even though I haven't graduated with my MBA yet, it's still reaping the benefits in the midst of the program.
Yeah, I mean, the experience with it, it's kinda like another Southwestern stepping stone where it's
Yeah,
like this seems like the kind of thing where regardless of what the next 10 years bring, whatever
yeah,
you're doing right now, you're gonna be able to also add to your tool belt in almost a, equal way, but it's a different
absolutely.
side of a business.
Have you read the book? I just finished it a week or two ago, but The Defining Decade. It was
No.
it's about like maximizing your 20s, and I know you're not in your 20s anymore, but it probably would still apply. Uh, no,
3rd
but
floor, baby, 3rd floor.
so the whole idea is like, just trying to rid the idea and the mentality that like 30 is the new 20, that like a lot of people have always said, and you kind of flush that out. So one of the ideas though is like in your 20s, the importance of having what they call identity capital, where you may not be getting paid a bunch, but you have a lot invested in who you're becoming in the process, right?
Mm,
And that's kind of the whole idea. That like that's the synopsis of that chapter. And I was like, man, I'm like, I got all of that with Southwestern. I'm getting it again with my MBA. It's really
yeah.
cool to have that, and especially in the midst of like me leaving the reunion, in the midst of getting prep for my international trip for school, which we'll get into here in a second. But all of that was kind of occurring all at the same time as I'm reading this identity capital chapter, and I'm like, this is awesome. It
Nice.
just all I love when all these thoughts are running through your head, and then you read a great book, and it so succinctly and accurately depicts what you're trying to articulate. And then you
Mm,
can say when someone has like I've said this for years, I want to be that guy and 10, 20 years that when someone has an issue, be like, oh, you should read this book, right? And
yeah,
like having that ability to tie back into some of those experiences that I've had in reading, and it's
yeah.
that was a cool moment.
When the student is ready, the teacher appears. Sounds like it was the right
I haven't heard
crossroads.
that before.
I
That's
don't know,
good.
I heard it a long time ago. Ooh, that's good, write that down.
Yeah, I wrote that down.
Dude, that's awesome. Okay, let me get into the nitty-gritty of, like, what do you do? Because, like, so, I mean, consultant, analyst can mean so many different things, but, like,
Sure.
what does your day-to-day look like? Like, when you meet with a client, what's your goal? What's the
hmm
product? What's the mission?
So we just started our, when I say just started, a month ago, started Q3. One of the biggest tasks that I had whenever I first started with the company was starting their Q3 promotional material. So working directly with their marketing team that then is distributed to all of their eye care providers around the country. And part of this is like they have to have specific parameters from a legal perspective, but then also from a visual, we call them just widgets on their eye care providers' dashboards, ensuring that they have everything ready to go for their Q3 promo. And so my job as kind of the pseudo product manager was ensuring that everything from a software development capacity was in the works. And our job is basically broken up into what we call sprints, and they're 2 week stretches where you try and break down each project into very bite-sized chunks so we know that the ball is moving in the right direction, and if we hit any blockers in the process of those things, we can go back to the drawing board, go back to the client and say, hey, we hit a snag here, can we maybe think of another way to show this? It can be something as simple as spacing, as like how many words are in this widget, or it could be something even more complex as to how something is calculated, which can be in some cases like a 2 hour call where you're
Mm,
trying to just refine how a percentage value is measured, right? So part of my role is ensuring that communication is solid. I'm a little bit of a messenger boy right now, just in terms of my responsibilities, but it's that crystal clear communication that we talked about before. And also like for my boss who has way more responsibilities than I do, kind of taking the lead on ensuring with the client that everything is tied off and that I'm on a day-to-day basis communicating with them via email or whatever the case is to make sure we're in a good spot.
And so then it's essentially so you're consulting the data that they need to use for their marketing.
hmm And some of
Um,
this is like confidential, so I can't get into
yeah,
like
no,
too
sure,
much
sure,
territory,
sure.
but like from a high level, that's been the cool part is I get a chance to peer into some of what this company is doing and get to hear some of like what promotional activity they're trying to do with their eye care providers long before those eye care providers even know. So
Yeah. It's
it's
a
neat
solid
insight.
marketing team. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, so because and that's this is actually a really cool point, but this is for book people, this is a very new and undiscovered side of the world. I mean, the marketing world is outrageous. And
it's
I'm talking
amazing.
about marketing in general. I mean, there's like digital marketing, I mean, this is, umbrellas underneath that. We weren't exposed to that. Like we went door to door with Facebook pages, and that
Well, and
was
there's
marketing.
marketing and then there's sales, right? And I think they
Right.
all fall under that marketing umbrella. And you can be good at one, you can be good at the other, and you can be good at both. That's what
Yeah.
I've been fascinated by over the years.
But Southwestern's not good at it.
I would agree.
I mean,
They're
it's
getting
not
better.
good. Well, but even like even this of the elephant they have to eat to have their marketing be considered stellar or
Mhm.
like as sound as some other companies have it, they are eating like one of the toenails. Like
Yeah.
when it comes to their doing better, there are so many things that need to be improved in their marketing department, but it's a whole different conversation. And it's
Yeah.
not their fault.
Story for Dibbler.
It's been yeah, it's been a budget thing. I get it.
Yeah.
So I'm not shitting on it. I'm just saying
Oh, no, no, you're good.
they're in the right track, but they have a long way to go. Um anyway, okay, that's dope. So you're learning all this stuff about marketing. Is there anything that's like really blown you away from a standpoint of discovering the world of marketing that just really like shocked your system when it came to this,
Um,
or is it pretty
I would
standard?
no, I would say, and this applies to marketing, but it's more in the scope of what I work with on a day-to-day basis. On any given week, we could send an updated file of all the transaction data for this client, and it can have like hundreds of thousands of lines of code. And it's like mind blowing just how much data is out there. And this is just for one segment of like one particular field, right? And that's what blows my mind is the depth and breadth of
Yeah.
data that is out there. And obviously that's like the big buzzword these days. But I had this conversation with my boss, and I'm like, my mind is reeling right now. And this was in the course of this meeting where I'm just like, I didn't even know we touched this much data, but it is mind blowing just the content that we have access to and what we can do with it as well. And that's what I'm always fascinated by is when you have, and this goes back to like sales analytics in my
Yeah.
work, right? Where if you sit down and know how many doors this first year knocked on, how many sit downs they had from there, how you could tweak their approach to help them get in more doors, and then you work your way down the sale to figure out like, okay, they need to tweak their close a little bit to, help whatever, right? And it's
Yeah.
all that stuff is so fascinating, but it's a way to translate that from what I'm currently doing into what you and I both have experience with. And for that, it's been very eye opening. And then also
Yeah.
too, I mentioned this. It may have been even on the last episode, but I've mentioned it to a lot of people over the years, especially to a lot of my classmates, and learning what they do is how broad the workforce is. And I don't think college really prepares you for that in turn. You've got like all your majors and you have a general idea as to what direction you might be headed, but the ways that you can apply those degrees or whatever you learn in college, whether it's a degree or with Southwestern, you can apply that to so many different things and do very well at it, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that I don't think time can only teach you. I don't think it's something that you can like be taught in a classroom. It's just like you have to experience that for yourself to know how big the world is and just to see it firsthand. And in light of the international trip that just got back from on Saturday, that was something that like was very apparent. So
Where did
it
you
was
go?
we did it was for our program for our MBA, and it's all part of like our international business credit. So all 36 of us students, we went to Zagreb, Croatia, and Budapest, Hungary, and we were there for a total of 8 days. and
What?
it was awesome, man. Like just the amount we learned, not just like about different companies that we visited, but culturally how those places operate. And you and I could have, a conversation on this that spans long beyond what we have available tonight. But especially with you being from Colombia and having seen a lot of the world yourself, it is amazing to think that like overall there is a big difference culturally between people here and there. But when you boil it down to what people really care about, and we learned this on the book field, is their family, their friends, their community, all those things, right? And having that presence of mind to be able to connect with whether it be the guy taking my order at the bar or the the chairman of the board that we met whenever my team presented for one of the company presentations. It's like you learn how to have that presence of mind to just connect with them and realize that this person is a human just like me, right? And it,
Yeah.
that part of it is really fun, and
Yeah.
it, people have said it differently over many episodes, but it's like I remember Shane Hertig when he met Roger Goodell, right? It's like you just greet him like a normal guy, right? He's
Yeah.
like, and like I'm sure people hate it when like when others put them on a pedestal if they're a really important person, and it's just like, no, man, he's a guy just like you and me. He's got his strengths, his weaknesses, he's got a family, all that. And there's a really cool word that I brought up with some of my classmates, and it's sonder, Sonder, and it's a really cool. The meaning of it is essentially where every person that you cross paths with has a life that's equally as complex as your own, whether
Yes.
you recognize it or not.
Yeah.
And it's a really neat word that applies, especially when you travel internationally and even sell books. That you have to meet people where they're at and appreciate
Yeah.
that.
And they're at where they're supposed to be, and you're where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Um, I think what that like what that brought to mind was that nobody's that important. Or let me rephrase that. Some people are that important, but it's not the people we think are that important. The people
Hmm.
that have really been important to like our humanity don't get enough credit. I mean, some people will never even know who they were because of like one little thing that they did that really changed the world, right? But like,
Sure.
um, or you could talk about like important people who people should know and are important, but nobody. For example, I always think of like Alan Turing. You know who that is?
Yeah. Uh, the, imitation game.
Yeah, like
Oh, great movies, man.
without that movie, or without like an Oppenheimer, which is like the same idea of movie. It's the
Sure.
same movie, but for two people who on our side really won the war
Right.
for us.
Yeah.
Like one was
Man.
on one end and one was on the other end. But like to me, those were the important people. You
Totally.
know what I'm saying? And now they have movies about them, but generally speaking, they're not like a pop cultural household. They're not a Kim Kardashian who's supposed to be an important person, or Roger Goodell. So I think what happens is we to your thing is we realize, oh, this is just a guy, or she's just a person. Kim Kardashian. Why
Right.
would you not just be able to be like, "Hey, are you the mom of the house?" And she'd be like, "Yeah," because she is, you know?
Have you not
Like,
heard about that? Like,
it's like,
she'd
oh,
probably
I
be
guess
saying that to me, right?
yeah, it's
It's
like,
like,
oh,
yeah.
but that's the thing is, like, I've talked about on the air where when I met Mario Andretti,
Hmm.
and that's another, like, person who's not important, he's just an important sports figure, but to me, he means a lot because I love Formula One. But anybody else who doesn't know racing in any way, shape, or form, which is a lot of people, would have knocked on that door and been like, "Oh, like I just had a big house." Like, you know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? So, like, nobody's really that important.
I have a question for you. So, do you think it's refreshing for figures like that to blend into the crowd and have a level of anonymity that's that's beyond the scope of probably what they normally encounter, right?
Yeah,
Because it's like, and I was watching a Michael Jordan documentary not long ago, and it struck me a little bit where he was just like, I would really love it if I just passed someone on the street and they didn't say a word at all. And
yeah,
it's like, damn, dude,
yeah,
like
dude. Absolutely,
that
absolutely.
is
People
deep.
wanna be famous and people wanna be rich, but they don't really
Yeah.
understand. what that is like, and I don't either. I'm not saying I do, but I try to imagine that. Like, 'cause funny story, my one of my clips on Instagram is doing well, and so I've I've
Attaboy.
kind of I've kinda noticed, like I'm not gonna say this for a bragging standpoint, I'm gonna just to give you an example of what I'm
Yeah,
talking about.
say it. I don't
There's
care.
I have one of my clips, I think it has, like, over 100,000 views,
Nice.
but with that comes comments, and with that comes out of those 100,000, some people don't like what I said, and there was a guy that commented, like, "Why don't you just go back?" 'Cause, the joke starts with me it's a one of my comedy clips, and it's like the joke starts with me saying something like, my family moved here because we were gonna get murdered." From Colombia, and then
Yeah.
they go into what it's like living in Nebraska. So the joke is about living in Nebraska. So all these people in Nebraska started commenting. I have like 4 or 5 of them that have commented, "Well, you should go back to Colombia where you were gonna be murdered then if you
Oh
don't like it that
gosh.
much." And I'm like, "Wow." Like, I don't take it personally because of Southwestern actually, but it makes me just think it's just like that's a very small sample of what like Michael Jordan,
Right.
right? Or Messi. There was that picture of Messi going. He just got transferred over to Miami, and he
Oh
got to
yeah. I
Miami, and
know.
he was. You saw the picture. He was like shopping at Publix or whatever.
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm like, dude, he probably hasn't been able to do that in 20 years.
Yeah.
Like he
That's
doesn't know
that's
what it's
probably
like
right.
to go to the grocery store with your kids. Like that sucks.
Yeah. It does, man. And it's oof. Yeah, that's a deep territory that we can get into where it's just like how bad do you really want it? You know, like that
Yeah,
there's that fame and success, but it's like what do you really want to be famous for? And I was going to bring this up earlier when you were talking about Alan Turing, where it's like in this day and age, obviously he's famous. I don't back in when was it the 40s or 50s or whenever it was that his work was so impactful. He was just doing his job. You know what I mean? And it's like he was so
yeah.
focused on the process, and yet his impact was immense. And
He won the war.
yeah,
That's why we won
better
the war.
said. Yeah, we
That
won the
is
war.
people think it's because of D-Day, and no, if you really look at historically, he won the war for us.
Right. And it is
It's
incredible
crazy.
to think that like all these famous people we talk about Jordan, Messi, they do it because they love it and they're focused on a process. And one of my favorite clips from The Last Dance was when Dennis Rodman is like, I play this game for free, but I get paid because of the bullshit. And like all the
Yeah,
stuff with like the media and like
yeah,
dealing with like management and all that. Like I that's why I get paid. And
yeah,
it's
exactly,
amazing.
exactly. That's and people are like, what is $400 million contract?
Yeah.
Why does it get paid that much?" It's because you can't go anywhere without security.
Yeah.
It it's
For sure.
because if you were on the street by yourself and there was a video of Messi showing back up to Argentina to his hometown, or like, or I don't know if he was in his hometown or Buenos Aires, one of the two, whatever. And he went to like one of his favorite restaurants that he used to go to when he was a kid, like to enjoy with his family. And within minutes, there was a fucking mob of like 200,000 people
Yeah.
outside, dude.
Oh, I
Can
believe
you
it.
imagine? And then besides that, so that's just the inability to like just go to the grocery store. And on top of that, because of the sheer number of people that know who you are, there is a large group of people who hate you, who want you dead,
Right.
who
Yeah.
like especially
He's
if
in
the
that
more
mob.
controversial you are, or the more like, there's a bunch of people who are like, fuck you. And you
Yeah.
just hear it every day, all the time, in the news. Like it's all the time. I mean, if I got that much hate, 4 or 5 people telling me to go back to my country so I can get murdered out of 100,000 people, can you imagine having a million, 100 million people just always constantly on you?
Yeah.
It's crazy, dude.
No, I mean, you got it. And it's amazing to me where in light of Messi going to his favorite restaurant and there's a mob, obviously, like vast majority of those people are supporters, but all it takes is one.
Yeah.
right? And it's like
And you don't know who it is.
yeah, how scary that is to just be fearing for your life like that. And I just yeah,
Yeah, dude.
there's a I was at my my Bible study last night, and we were talking about um the difference between solitude and loneliness. And it's
Yes.
like it's such an interesting dichotomy where and I feel like there's a cultural influence on this, and it won't get like too deep into like what biblically we discuss, but just in terms of like the reality there, it's a translation to it's loneliest at the top, which we've
Yeah.
all heard, especially if you think of like Dave Brown and like Dustin Hillis, how they were PCing each other over those summers that they were really, really kicking ass. And people just couldn't talk a common language enough to help like motivate them because they were such an anomaly for a job like this.
Yeah.
And I've thought more and more about that in terms of like what I want for my life and my pursuits with my career and family and all that stuff. It's like I how much is too much, right? In terms of the
Yeah.
growth and the trajectory that I want for my career, it comes at a cost, right? Where you can only give so much of yourself before it's not worth it anymore. And I think that's like, frankly, another thing I was exposed to on the book field is when you'd meet those families they had lived in a great house, but one of the two spouses was working, insane
Mm.
number of
Yeah.
hours, and then as a result, the makeup of the family wasn't very good. That's not something I really want for myself, right?
Yeah.
So, I,
With Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, that's all I got. Go
No,
ahead.
with an exception of a few people or a few, this is gonna be loosely this thought, but,
Mhm,
for example, if you get paid $100 an hour, you can make
mhm,
$100 or you can go watch TV for an hour, right?
mhm.
That's how you measure your time is your money, right? Really, that's
Opportunity
what it meant.
cost.
Not your
Yeah,
success, but just like your time is how you measure your money, right?
sure.
So what does that say about what you've like if you make $100 million, right? And it's worth that much of your time, you have to be giving something up elsewhere,
Right,
whether that's your kids, your wife, your true interests. What I mean, you only have 24 hours a day, right? And if your 24 hours per every day for 365 of them is worth $100 million, you know, what does that say about like where the rest of that non tangible money's going?
right. It is an interesting way to think of it, and part of it is I just think all of us have some desire to be comfortable and live a
Yeah,
life like that, right? Uh, but it almost becomes like a compulsion or like a fixation on people who get really entrenched in their career. And once it really takes off, it's like, oh, well, like how much more can I be doing, right? And
mm,
it's like, okay, well, I said it earlier, how much is enough? So
yeah,
I don't know. It's a cool thought. And then I will say this, in light of what I've experienced in my MBA, because the average age is, you killed that, man. You gonna get another one?
that's all the only one I had.
Bottoms up, man. Cheers.
Sorry.
Um, no, 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 you're good. That was just a great shot. Just
Clip it, Amy. Clip it.
clip it. So, in light of the fact that like the average age is 33, I've had a lot of great discussions with some of my buddies in the cohort who are husbands and dads, and with that, it's just like I've also learned too. A lot of these spouses they're sacrificing a lot just to allow their significant other to be in the program to advance themselves to, from a career perspective, all that. And
Yeah,
it's really cool to on this trip. We had a lot of company visits, but they did a really good job of like making a hard cutoff at like 5:30 where we could just go and do our own thing and see the towns that we were in. And it was just like it was so cool because we would, much like Southwestern, we work hard but we party hard. And it was every night we'd be out, until midnight, 1 a.m. easy, and then wake up call is 7 a.m. So like you hustle and you make it work. But that's part of what makes those memories in the course of a trip like that, because you have so many great discussions, albeit a lot of them are, a little bit more lucid because of the drinks that you've had. But it's very refreshing because you are away from, and that's one thing I didn't mention, is spouses and kids are not allowed on the trip. So you kind of have the purity of like just the group to interact with.
Oh, it's
And
great
so
team building.
yeah, totally. And so we had a great time. Just there was a bar not 200 yards from our place in Zagreb, and we were there like every single night that we were in Zagreb. And
Yeah. When in Croatia.
when in Croatia, that's right. And I will. This is one thing I would say is that the culture of just like the European style of living is something that I really aspire to. Just their pace is, especially in Zagreb, that I experience, is so much slower and
Yeah.
relaxed. And I'm just like, this is a breath of fresh air. Where, and Budapest was a little different. It's more of like a financial district, so things are a little bit more fast paced. The way I explained it is like Zagreb was a lot like Houston in terms of people's friendliness and just being very chill. Budapest was more like New York or Boston, where it's like people, you catch friendly people, but you also meet some of those folks that are just
Get to
like,
it.
yeah, get to it. What you got? Come on.
I
And
sold in
especially if you,
Massachusetts, so I get
oh
it.
yeah, those massholes, man, they'll get you. Um, so I will say though that that experience alone was worth it for me. And aside from the Sisslers that I went on, I haven't been international since I think the summer before my senior year of high school. So now that I'm like in my late 20s, I can start budgeting for more international adventures. And like I want to do Bizzler. I can't make it this year, but like, your ears perked up there. I love it.
Speaking of
Uh,
which,
Speaking of, yeah, no, but
now
it's
that
coming.
you say that.
Yeah, no, but it's like I caught the travel bug again being in Europe, and it's amazing. Uh, Going back to that like sonder word I used earlier, where just like everyone has a different reality, but you learn to enjoy it while you're there. And I think that was something that was a big takeaway for me. And I even wrote it in our, we had to do like a quick write up for our class, our international business class, which was at that point like a formality. You just had to write something decently coherent to submit. But like I took that opportunity. I was like, this was the coolest trip I've taken in a long time. So it
Hell
was
yeah, dude.
yeah, very enlightening.
Dude, that's so fun. I love that.
Yeah,
Um, hey, let me switch some gears and talk about some Southwestern
sure,
stuff so that way people
sure,
actually like because some people tune in for this part.
sure.
What's your favorite part of the show? I should ask I'm asking a true fan here, and I don't think I've ever
Yeah.
asked someone this that's a true
Um,
fan.
you asked really good questions.
Oh, thanks, dude.
You're welcome.
I
I think
appreciate
that's
that.
one of my favorite things is you in true podcast host form, like you know how to take a topic and kind of dive into it a little bit more deeply in a way that's not um, like invasive, but it more enlightening, and it creates a more fluid conversation. And I think that's something I've noticed over a lot of the episodes I've seen. It creates a very natural discussion, which is what podcasts are all about. So I think that's one of my favorite things for sure. I think the
Thanks,
variety of
dude.
it. Yeah, you're welcome. I think the variety of people you've had on the show, in addition to, uh, don't get me wrong, the fact that it's called ponytails and everything is like horse themed, like I'm always up for like a good pun. So like you got me there.
Saddle up, boy.
Yeah, saddle up. I love all that. So, but
Thanks, dude.
definitely the questions. You know how to reflect, and I'd credit you for just being able to be a good host.
I appreciate that. It just
Sure.
honestly, it's been just trying to be. I've learned through this process. I don't know that if it was like a natural thing that just comes up or just the way I would choose to have my mentality when I do one of these episodes, but it's just like, all right, be as curious as possible
Yeah. Yeah.
and just let it go wherever it goes. And then the one thing that I do try to be mindful of is where we left off if we went on a tangent, so that I could bring it back to like, okay, back to you were saying this. That's the one
Right.
thing that I am consciously trying to do, but just trying to be curious. And it's been a blast, man. I've learned so much about so many different industries. Like the growth that I've had because of this show is probably equivalent to like the amount of growth I've had because of like Southwestern. Like it's
Oh, I'm
just
sure.
so
In a
much
different
cool
direction,
learning.
right?
Yeah.
Where it's
And
more, it's more, it's a safer environment. You've got the familiarity of all these people that you know or could know through the network. So I get it. That's
and it and it's nice to be honest and transparent. It feels good. I'm sure there's been stories on here before that haven't been quite accurate or things were a little off or it was like the wrong person or something. But generally speaking, it's just it's cool when people are open and true. So yeah.
totally.
Um okay, well appreciate that. Thank you so much. Sorry I
You're
put you on
welcome.
the spot there with
No, no, no.
with that question. But, uh
What else you got? What other questions do you
yeah,
have?
I wanna when is the last time you cried? No, I like that.
Oh man, I don't know,
Isn't that
honestly.
that's my favorite go-to question, like, on a one-on-one conversation, like,
Dang.
yeah, it's interesting. Actually, on this wait, this is a total tangent. I swear we're gonna go to Southwestern stuff, but
We're good, man.
this is so in I got this actually from a Bible study that I was doing with Grant Greeter. I
Okay.
think I hope they're still doing it. It was called, Christ on the Couch. It was cool. So
Okay.
it was like a Grant had this big couch, and we did a Bible study on it. Anyway, at one point somewhere, we were encouraged to do this, like, 30-day trial where you had to do like one thing new for 30 days once a month.
Cool.
It was really cool. So, some people took up art, some people went like bike riding every day or something you would stop. But for me, the first thing I did was I was like, I'm gonna meet a new person every day and I'm gonna have a set of questions that I'm gonna ask, like just to be able to like get to know this person better. So it was something like, hey, what's your name? Where you from? It was pretty much like a podcast.
I was gonna say that was my first
Wow, look
thought
at
was
that.
just
My
like
early
you were
starts.
grooming yourself to become a podcast host long before you knew you'd even become one. That's awesome.
Oh, Inception. Okay, so so Interstellar. I don't know what this is. Anyway,
Inception. Yeah.
yeah, Inception, that's the one. But so on the cards, it was like, like I said, name, hometown, blah, blah, blah. And then I don't know what gave me the idea, but I was like, when's the last time you cried? And when's the last time you laughed really loud and really hard? Like cry hard and laugh hard.
Yeah.
Um, and to watch people answer the questions and open up about like what was stressing them out, and then like sometimes they just it was amazing. It's like the experience was wild, dude. I did it for 30 days, met 30 people. Some of those people I still am in touch with, still are
Oh,
friends of mine.
that's cool, man.
And if you ask them
That's
like,
really
"Hey, how
cool.
did you guys meet?" They'll say, "God, this fucking asshole just comes up to me and starts asking me questions." And I'm like, yeah, so it's really I mean, a lot of them. And I
That's
would
so you though. Like, oh man, I get like that is if you were to line up like a bunch of book people that I know and be like, this is something that this person did, I'd be like, yeah, that was Andres for sure. Like, that was
Thanks.
yeah.
Bro, dude, it was crazy. I had rules like you couldn't have this like no, you couldn't talk to two like the same gender twice. So you couldn't like man or two.
Okay.
It was like always a man or woman, or I guess in 20 this is in 2017, which for before I get canceled for saying anyway. And it was like I couldn't they couldn't be the same age either back to back. So
Okay.
I couldn't have like two college kids back to back. I'd have to be like an adult, right? Or an older adult. Um and also, if like the last rule was try to be as like to find the most interesting person that you can. And there was this lady who they called her the white coat lady. I don't think she's there anymore. She was on campus. I don't know why I'm telling this story, but whatever.
I'm
Um,
here for it, man. Keep going. This is
and
great.
so this white coat lady would sit outside, and she was I'm assuming every campus has one of these people, but she would sit up beside the union on a random Friday and just start preaching her
Oh yeah.
I
We got
don't
a
wanna say
couple of those at
cult,
A&M.
but, like,
Yeah.
"Jesus is coming back, and the Mayans proved," and, like, she starts, like, way off the cuff, like, I don't wanna say crazy because that's insulting, but, like, not the
Intense.
typical intense, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I was coming into the union, and she's out there doing her thing, and I'm like, "Wait a minute." So I just stopped, waited for her to finish, and then I went up and started talking to her. I'm like, "Hey, where are you from? What's your hometown?" The most lovely lady ever, dude.
Oh, I'm
She was
sure.
she was
Yeah.
from Nebraska, Western Nebraska. I got her name, totally, like, not once did Jesus or anything like that come up that
Sure.
she just is outside preaching, nothing. She just started talking to me. She's like, "Yeah, I grew up in blah, 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 and, I did this," and I asked her when's the last time she cried. She's like, blah, 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 and she told me and stuff, and I'm like what the hell was that? And so every time we'd see her on campus, I'd be like, "Hey, Lisa." She's like, "Oh, hey, Andres," and she'd go back to her preaching. And it was so she'd be like, "Jesus Christ died for your sins, and this, oh, hey, Andres, the sinners will like just the funniest thing, dude. I don't know why I told you that story, but I
No, but I'm here for it because we had a couple people at A&M who were the same way, and by and large, and like this is something that do sincerely feel bad about, is a lot of people made fun of these people just and it's like
I mean, it's like hard not to be
yeah,
to be
no,
fair.
there's a little
I'm
bit
not
of that,
condoning it, but it's hard not to.
right? I'm not saying I support it. I'm saying I understand.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's like,
I get
so it's like you want to be respectful because they clearly are passionate and believe in this, but it's also like, hey man, like let's dial it back a lot and just keep it chill. Because we had there was one for sure, I forget his name, but he would hang out. We have midnight yell at Texas A&M the night before every home football game, which is like so Aggie
it.
football. They've got yeah. I don't. You've never heard of this?
Oh,
I'm
you
shocked. Okay,
weirdos.
just buckle up, man. So at Texas A&M, before every home football game at midnight, they host what's called Midnight Yell, and the Yell leaders, which A&M, because it's a traditional military college, it was all male for years. They have 5 guys that are elected by the student body to hold yell practice, which is like we don't have cheers, we have yells because we're Aggies and we're weird like that. So it's all choreographed. Look it up on YouTube at some point. Like it's fascinating to watch for the first time because you're like, what the hell is this
What
cult?
in the name of execs is
Yeah,
this?
yeah, yeah, exactly. No, it's very similar. Like it's a similar vibe where, but picture like 40,000 students packed into a stadium at midnight going to yell practice where there's 5 guys dressed up in overalls leading this yell practice, and people would be leaving the stadium and run into his name is Brother Jed, and I remembered it in the midst of me telling the story. He would be preaching at like 12:45, 1 a.m. out like in the courtyard of the student union at A&M, the Memorial Student Center. And people would be, coming from the bars to go to midnight yell, and so they'd be harassing them, and it's like
Oh, that's a bummer.
yeah, it get a little like, come on, guys, like let's be mature here. That part of it really sucked, but it's also like you can't blame the people for making fun of him because he's there at 12:45
Yeah.
a.m. preaching, and it's
He's intentionally
pretty
in
intense.
the way of a drunk 20-year-old. So yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
understandable.
So, but yeah, midnight yell practice. Go check it out.
That's
Go
wild.
YouTube
Well,
that,
I do
and
know that A&M's like student fan base is fucking outrageous.
it
There,
is.
I saw
It
the
is.
thing about the in their baseball team where if a pitcher throws a ball and walks a
Yeah,
guy,
four
they
pitch
start
walk.
screaming. But
They have ball four.
if there's a 4 pitch walk, they start singing ball five,
Uh-huh.
ball five, and then it's a ball, and then they keep going, and they've gotten pitchers to go like 13 balls. In other words, they've walked people and then gave up like a home run grand slam. Like they get it, and if you watch the video of them doing it, it is everybody, all 40,000 of them
I've
are
been to
just
many of those, man.
top
They're
of their
great.
lungs
There's
screaming.
They are
It's
those baseball games are so fun, and I would call A&M is definitely a cult. I'm this many years removed from my undergrad experience that I'm very willing to admit we are a cult. It's a great cult, and I think Pedro, Austin Souders, amongst others, have said that cult is the first part of culture. But
yeah, Southwestern and
it,
A&M, they put the cult in
that's right.
culture for sure. Capital
So
CULT.
damn right. So there was one game I was at where we got to like ball 9 or ball
That's
10.
brutal, dude.
Oh, I know. And like picture like a 20-year-old kid on the mound, right? Like trying to just keep his head together to pitch a strike and keep it over the plate.
Because
And
because because you're not saying ball 10 because he's thrown 10 balls. You're saying ball 10 because he's thrown 10 balls in a row,
exactly.
which is
Exactly.
insane.
Yes. So then like the guy next to me, he's like, dude, I'm out of fingers. What do I do? Start like throwing my foot up? Like ball 11, ball.
It's
It was it was hysterical. And
crazy.
I think the tradition, the end of that tradition is once he finally throws a strike, the whole crowd will stand up like with a round of applause, like, hey, he threw a strike. So it's a pretty
Even
it's
that is insane.
I know. It's a pretty it's
That's
a pretty
so
savage fan base. And then another one of my
savage,
favorites
dude.
is for the first base coach will yell. So if you're familiar with like how a baseball field is constructed, they have like the first base and third base box for the coach.
Yeah.
And so very rarely is the coach in the box. But basically what we would say is we yell at the opposing first base coach. The student section is right there. Just say, get in the box, get in the box, get in the box. And the second he'd work his way into the box, we'd yell, get out of our box, get out of our box.
That's
So
brutal.
yeah, and it's just like talk about trying to distract a team or a coach. It
I mean,
was
it works, bro. It
yeah,
works. That the guy that like, because the thing is in baseball, if you throw a strike and people like the batter knows there's got to be a strike coming, and it's probably going to be like a safer bet, and so then
mhm,
it just slams. There's no way that they haven't gotten like a
yeah.
big hit off of those.
Oh
It's
man,
crazy. That's brutal. And I don't know. Look, listen, there's crazy crowds, and I'm as a soccer fan, I can tell you right now, we have the even crazier crowds than that,
I would agree.
but it rivals. Like it's like
Yeah, no, soccer, in my opinion, and then maybe European basketball, those would be, in my opinion, the top two rowdiest like fan
yeah, they have
like or
songs,
crowds. Yeah, and
and they'll
I'm
sing
like,
them the whole time.
yeah, to that I've always been so envious of, and like I'll give you one of my favorite stories of when I really started following soccer, and like I get in and out of it over the years, but back in 2010 when the World Cup was in South Africa,
Africa. Yeah.
my dad and I we were he was I think doing some consulting that summer, so he was home a lot, and I was running cross country and I was working at a restaurant during the lunch shift. And that summer, all the games were in the morning. And what was great was we had a team long run first thing that morning, I think at 6 a.m. I got home at like 7:30 and the USA Algeria game was on. And it was
Yeah.
the Landon Donovan goal. And
Donovan.
like,
Yeah, the
yeah.
90th. Yeah.
So I have several incredible sports memories with my dad that to this day, like I'll forever be grateful for. But this was one that I'll never be able to recreate because it was just the two of us in the house. So we were glued to the couch that entire game. The second Landon Donovan kicked that goal, he and I like jumped up on the couch.
Yeah.
My dad is not an animated guy. And what's interesting is like Amberly Thielman gave me I'm very much like my dad, except for the fact that I have a little bit of a goofy side, which is why Amberly Thielman called me the undercover
Right.
goofball
Yeah. That was
yeah.
your
So
nickname.
that was my nickname. So from there, like my dad and I are running around the house, like kicking things over, like just it was amazing, and it was one of the coolest and most like raw forms of like fanaticism that you could ever ask for,
Yeah.
and
It
I would
means something.
yes, because it's your country,
It's
right? Like you
patriotic. Yeah.
yes, and I would rival that with it's kind of been tainted now because of the Astros 2017 sign stealing stuff,
Oh,
but
jeez.
yeah, all that. But
You
like
Houstonites.
I was watching the game with my dad for in 2017 when they won it,
Yeah. That
and he doesn't get animated for much, but he got really animated for that one,
was a
and
crazy series.
it was. And then this past year, it was even cooler because I was with two of my sisters and my now brother-in-law at Game 6 when they won it, and
No
it
way.
was awesome. Yeah,
That's wild.
yeah,
Yeah,
that
man.
was
It's crazy because as an immigrant, I can tell you that, growing up outside, and you probably experienced this when you've traveled, but for the most part, most other countries look up to the USA, right? And that doesn't mean that we, like in Hungary, people are happy being in Hungary and Croatia. They're probably
sure,
being, and the reputations, those Americans are crazy, probably in general. But like, USA is number one, number one, number one all the time for the longest time during like the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So when Colombia gets to be number one in a good way, not
sure,
in the number one exporter of cocaine, but like number one or like better than Poland, because it kind of is rare proof that we can show to the world to say, look, we're not that bad.
sure.
We're not as bad
I
as you
hear you.
make us out to be. So like, it's so in that same scope that you had with your dad from the patriotism side, our patriotism is, like, also, like, really through the roof because, like, when Argentina won, dude, this last time, I was with my buddy who's an Argentinian and his sister at his house when they were and, like,
Oh,
just to
dude.
I mean, I was so excited for Messi, but to watch them, like, celebrate because it's their country, and then we went out to this, like, giant bar in Argentinians are known for, like, their grill outs or cookouts. I don't know if you knew that, but it's, like,
No,
big
I
for
didn't
their
know that.
culture, yeah. Big grill, big steak, grill out people. It's like the way check it out for yourself. Go to an Argentinian restaurant. The way they do steak is top
Like
notch.
a kind of like a barbecue style where they just like
Yeah.
to host everyone.
Yep, gi
Cool.
and the way they cook and do their meat, I don't even know how to explain it, but we went to one of those. I have footage. I wish I would have prepared if I know we're gonna talk about this, but
Okay.
like, it was to be part of, like, there was 120 of them, and they were all, like, so to see it, I'm not even Argentinian, but to have been part of that, I felt honored, honestly, because they were bleeding their heart out for their country because they just were the best in the world at something,
Mhm.
that they don't normally get to be. It was amazing.
In my opinion, here's a different direction we can take this. I would hope that America can experience something like that soon. Because with all the division that's
Yeah,
going on in the country, there needs to be some unifying factor. And it's like I that's one thing that
yeah,
I do miss about that year from 2010 is I remember like I went to work that day and a lot of the I worked at a restaurant. A lot of the guys that work there are Hispanic from like Mexico, El Salvador, Honduras, a couple of South American guys, but there were a lot of American natives on that staff. And I remember we all got there and we were like, "Did you see it?" Like it was just
yeah.
one of those like, how
Where
could you
were
not?
you when this happened? Yeah,
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 exactly.
yeah,
The seismic moment where it's just
yeah.
like, man, this is
It's
crazy.
like it's like for people for a concept of like an analogy, it's like imagine how bad 9/11 was, but it brought us together. It's like the opposite of that. Like if it was a
Right.
positive 9/11, you know what I'm
Yeah. No,
saying?
that
It's
is
like
exact. That's very well said.
the as bad as that felt, take that, but make it that's how good it feels when,
Mhm.
like, even a victory, when they win, it's amazing,
Absolutely.
even if they don't win the whole thing. Anyway, okay.
Yeah. We went on a tangent there.
Yeah,
We
way
should have
tangent,
more.
way tangent.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's do some Southwestern stuff. Okay, just because some people might not go back all the way to episode 17 to re-listen or take in what this is. Tell me about how you got recruited. I always love recruiting
Yeah.
stories.
So this is actually really cool in hindsight because uh, because of the reunion recently, so Pedro had some family stuff going on and he flew in on Saturday
Yeah.
to celebrate Dan Moore's retirement. And so he and I shared a hotel room, which was like, this was a great move on my part. I'll pat myself on the back, but I booked my hotel 2 days before the trip and it was like, "Do you want a queen or a double bed?" And I was like, I was literally about to hit submit on a king, and it's like, you know what? It's a Southwestern event. I might as well book a double bed just to be safe. Sure enough, Pedro calls me like a day or two later. He's like, "Hey, I haven't booked a hotel room. I'll be there on Saturday. Do you have any extra space?" I'm like, "As a matter of fact, I do. This works out great." So
Actually.
yeah, we were talking some about the recruitment process and of course, in a moment like that when you're back together with your crew and like you kind of reflecting on some of those summers together, I had a chance to sit down and thank him for the whole process because it was the way I was recruited was through Elisa Serrato, who happened to be on this trip as well, which was great to see her.
Yeah, it was
So
good seeing
she
her, yeah.
yeah, I hadn't seen her in years, but it was what was really cool was we had a let's see, it was a class, I think it was history, American history, and I only had one class at A&M that was ever surveyed. And what blew my mind was that we had students who would sometimes get surveyed like 10 or 12 times. I had one in all 4 years at A&M that surveyed my class, and I'm grateful for Elisa. I'm grateful for the professor who allowed her to survey the class because I found out later, once I started recruiting, that that's sometimes a big no-no with certain professors on campus.
Yes.
So my ignorant brain at that age. So fill it out. Claudia Vega, Pedro's sister, calls me. I show up to the informational. So Ben Goodman and Amber Bragnow Thomas, they host my informational meeting. And Amberly, it's cool. She's been brought up a couple times now. She, what's the phrase? She closed me, like did the final survey questions to then give me an interview. I forget the term.
Yeah.
Uh, it's
They
like
yeah,
there's a
it's when they
particular.
sit down with you because you mark you want to hear more about the program.
Yes,
So
exactly.
they
And
and
I can't
it's
remember.
like a
It's
closing or the temperature taking questions or the something like that.
right. So she goes through some of those. And she scared me to death, man. She was
She
really
should. She's
intense. Yeah,
intimidating.
she is. Yeah. And
Or she can be when she wants to be. She knows how to
right.
be, is I should say.
Yes.
You're lovely, Amberly, but when you want to be, you can be very intense.
Yeah. I could say that to her face. I don't care. It's just like, yeah, she knows how to really grill you. So I I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna get an interview. And so like I don't know what it was. She just appreciated. I started working when I was 15, so like I really tried to hammer that home. It was just like I really like to work. I'm looking for something different this summer, etc. Come back in with my interview with Pedro. Come to find out, he's one of 7 kids. I'm one of 5. Both of us have only sisters, and big Catholic families. Both of us love Aggie football. Both of us love music. Like the list goes on and on. And this is something I know you and I talked about on the prior episode, but I don't know if it would have been different if someone else had tried to recruit me, but because it was Pedro recruiting me and that we had all that in common, it it really let my guard down in a positive way where I was able to just like enjoy the interview process and know I was in a place that I could grow and learn a lot. And that was the summer, or I guess the spring semester of my sophomore year. So I was in school for 5 years, did the classic Aggie victory lap, and it was it's cool because it was summers of my following my sophomore, junior, senior, and then super senior year. Then I graduated, went to sell my last time, and then moved on from there. So it was like the timing of it was great. I had a internship with the natural gas company following my freshman year, so it's like I got some like real world internship
Internship.
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
internship, and then did this for 4 summers, and it was cool just to have a little bit of both. But once I got like a taste of Southwestern, I was like, I need to do this until I graduate for sure. Because it was just there have been many people who comment on this, who have commented this on the podcast, that it's like it is the best thing a college kid can do. I don't, and others have said this too. I don't think it's the best career for everyone once they graduate, but in terms of just like exposure to real world stuff, I am reaping the benefits to this day, and it's like it's so cool in hindsight to think of like all these soft skill sets that I've been able to utilize in my career that I certainly may have learned some things in my undergrad and class and organizations that I was involved in, but by and large a lot of that has to do with Southwestern. So
Yeah. Amen. Well said. Um, I'm keeping an eye on the time. I'm gonna ask you some rapid fire questions so we can get some
do
stories
it.
throughout of your career throughout in there, and then we can go some ponytails. Dude, this has been fun to catch up with you, bro.
Always, man. Yeah. We always have a good time.
This is good. While I pull these up, what was your favorite part of the reunion?
Honestly, getting a chance to catch up with people who I didn't know very well.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
like Jake Lowe,
that makes
some
sense.
of the Southwestern insurance guys that I had crossed paths with many times, but just like didn't have a chance to visit with, or we just didn't run in the same circles when we were selling books. I went to lunch with Chris Fontenot on that Friday. I got in a day early on purpose just so I could like relax on that
Yeah,
Friday.
I remember you
And
texted me on Thursday
yeah,
night. Yeah.
yeah, he didn't text me back. It's all good. Uh,
Okay. Listen,
I'm just kidding.
That was July 13th, which
Hey,
was the
y'all,
23-year
you're
anniversary
good,
of
man.
moving to the US.
No, 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 you're good. I'm just
I was
joking.
with Bam.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're fine. I had to throw
I
that
know.
in.
I was
It's
wondering if
on
you
the
were
air
gonna
now.
say it. I was
Yeah,
wondering.
yeah. So we I got in honestly, like I was out cold that Thursday night anyway, and went to lunch with Chris Fontenot. He brought me back to the company and like showed me around, where they office out of. And I'll never forget this. He like waltzed in, marched right into the building, and I'm like, dude, you're gonna need to give me a minute. I haven't been here in like 6 years, and I'm having like a lot of flashbacks, like some PTSD of all
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah,
he's
dude.
like, "Oh wait, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right." But in light of all that, I love catching up with all those Southwestern insurance guys, and that was like the table I really sat with at the what do you call it, the retirement speech and everything. So
Mm.
love visiting with them, but just seeing everyone too, man. I and I put this like in my little feedback survey. I was like, I want this to become a 5-year deal where we can have something to punt forward every 5 years and know we're going to cross paths with these people again. You know,
Yeah. Or they all come to Bisler. One
that
of the
too,
2.
or
One of
both,
the 2. Or both, yeah.
or both.
Oh, by the way, I gotta say this really quick. I do wanna let people know, there is gonna be a Nashville mini get together with a bunch of alumni. If you want more if you're in Nashville, Walton Simmons, or just, message us. We'll get you some details on that. It's gonna be, I think, August
Cool,
25th from 6 to 8. We're gonna try to do this in every city
sweet.
remotely, and, just have people kinda help us put together events. So if you wanna do one in Houston, just do, like, a drinking night or something, and you wanna hear more about that, and if you're listening and you are, like, living in a city, let us know. We wanna start creating little orgs in each city.
No, I love that. I'm
So,
happy to just reach out to me. We can put that together.
hell yeah. Like, the whole goal of this is to eventually, like, be able to, like, use the network to, like, raise money. For example, right now, there's, like, these crazy fires in Hawaii. Did you see that today?
No,
Oh, yeah,
I had
like,
no idea.
half of Lahaina burned down in Maui. I got family there, and it's kinda scary, but,
Damn.
like,
No, I didn't know about this.
they're gonna need help, so it'd be kinda cool to be like, "Alright, we're gonna do the org in Nashville versus the org in Houston, see how much money you guys can raise or
Cool.
donate. Winner gets a telescopic pen, but we're gonna send that over to there, and then get Pat Roach over in Chicago versus, I don't know, whoever in Steve Hurley in Atlanta, and then see what org, and then, just to kinda, like, do that kinda stuff and mobilize the network for something positive." End
Love
of
that.
announcement. Anyway, okay, rapid fire, thank you for letting me talk about that. Rapid fire questions.
You're welcome.
Okay, what was your favorite territory of all your summers? And by this, I mean not the kind of territory, but, like, where you like, the school district and or county and or state.
I would say Scottsburg, Indiana,
Ooh,
an
good old
hour north.
Midwest.
Yeah, hour north of it. Technically, it's they call themselves the South still. It's interesting.
Ah,
It's like yeah, it's one of
those
those,
damn
right?
Hoosiers.
Yeah, so hour north of Louisville, roughly. And yeah, so like if you go maybe another 30 minutes to an hour north of there, that's when it's like the Midwest, but they really the Kentuckiana region is like truly South. It's
The
really
South will
interesting.
rise again. There's
Yeah,
Confederate flags flying around. Tell me you saw Confederate flags flying around.
probably so. Yeah. Even
Some
though I'm
people's
pretty sure they were
kids.
part of the Union.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I see
Yeah.
Confederate flags here in, like, there's a guy that walks by here
Oh my
here in
gosh.
Portland, and I'm like, "Dude, you're
You're
as far
you're
away
in
from the
Oregon.
South as you maybe can be in the
Yeah.
continental USA. Like,
Oh
what
my
are you
gosh.
doing?
Ugh.
You're in the wrong place, guy." Alright, favorite kind of turf?
Uh, I love country, man.
Yes.
I'm a suburban guy, like, that's where I was raised, but I love some country porches and just knocking out in the sticks.
Poor country or big brick country? Because there's both.
Both. I do
Interesting.
love both. I found ways to really connect with a lot of those people
And yeah, it's nice big brick because you don't it there you get the country niceness and the ability to close bigger packages,
and the
but,
money.
like, they're
Yeah,
further away, so, like, usually if it's a big brick house, it's got, like, a long driveway, so the time in between houses is costly. Whereas if it's, like, kind of middle income country, all the houses are right up next to the highway or the country road, so you can just, like,
yeah.
pop, 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 pop,
Dude,
and
I
just
sometimes I needed that mental, like, build up as that, like, on those long driveways, I'd be having to build myself up to go knock
yeah.
on the next house. So it's like, some people can just be a machine and go knock one after the other, but I'm like, "No, I need a little downtime."
Hey, self-talk here, as
Yep.
I admit, I agree. Favorite advanced sales?
Ooh, probably, Bill Zizzy, Dave Rosen.
Dude, it's hard to beat, dude,
I
hard to
know.
beat, hard to
Got
beat.
114 units out of the car.
So
It's the
good, and
best.
she gave me $900.
$100.
So good. Favorite HQ?
Probably my last summer. I had, so it was me, Andrew Herwald, Preston Knowles, and Chris Kornowski. we had a lot of trouble with some PR in like our 4 county area, and it was like every morning we'd leave Waffle House and be like, "All right, we'll hopefully see everyone back at the HQ tonight. Like, good luck." And I will say, like, my second summer, I lost a rookie who was he wasn't my rookie, but just a rookie at my HQ. And once he left, and just kind of seeing like the impact it had on me and the other first year that I was with, I made a pact with myself. I was like, I'm never gonna lose a first year in my HQ again. And so like that was my promise to myself, and it never happened in the final 2 summers that I sold. So it was like that was a big. We did have to send one home just because he wasn't like doing great, but like voluntarily they stayed. Like the ones that were around. So I was really proud of that. But that fourth summer, Andrew, I was really proud of. He had a crazy Facebook post go out about him. And in light of that, the next day I think he had back to back best days ever following that Facebook post going
Wow.
out. And I was like, that's how it's done, man. So
That takes some brass, big
yeah,
ones.
yeah, big ol'
Hell
cojones.
yeah.
He was ready to get
Or
after it.
or if you're a gal, some brass ovaries. Either way,
Right.
takes some of those, some genitals. All right,
It
enough of that.
does.
Favorite product to sell or tack on?
Oh man, that's a good question. I've never thought of that. I sold a lot of those Ask Me's, man.
Yeah, they're
If
so
if
easy.
if I sold one, they were gonna buy the other. Like whenever if I close them on one and be like, the other one's like 30-40% off. Like, might as
Yeah,
well have both. Because
yeah, dude.
and I think one of my closing techniques was like, they're gonna be asking a lot more questions once they're done with these. So might as well have this other set.
So
Like,
good.
yeah, you're probably right.
Did you ever do the
So,
scratch and sniff for the Ask Me's in the high schooler?
absolutely. Yeah. I
That's
did that a
like
couple times. Yeah.
we don't talk about that enough, but we should. Like people, I would, you get a high schooler to sit down with you, and they're like, especially when they're like the really serious jock, too cool for school guy, and
Yeah.
you
It's like, who
whip
the
out the
hell's this
Ask Me's,
kid?
and you start doing a demo for the Ask Me's to a junior in high school with a
Yeah.
serious face. Like the
Oh my
scratch and
gosh.
sniff, and you scratch in and like get them to like sniff it. They'd be like, "Oh yeah," and you're like,
Feels like a book.
the best is when they lied and they're like, "Oh yeah, it does smell like whatever." And you're like, "Uh huh,
Cool. I
yeah."
was lying. Anyway, here's our SAT prep.
Don't be a sheep.
Yeah.
Here's the CEA. Yeah, okay. Your favorite off schedule story if you have one.
Um, thinking about that. I
Either because you don't have many or you have a ton.
No, I don't have many. Yeah. I was a pretty good
Oh,
pupil.
Sammy Southwestern. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So you got half of the Southwestern experience, is what you're saying.
No, so there was one day I was in Georgia. I was in Rome, Georgia, which is like in the foothills of the Appalachians. And I don't know what it was. It was just like that point in the summer where I'm just like, I want to freaking be here, man. I want to go home. And like, but like I wasn't gonna go home. Like
Yeah,
that whole
dude.
thing.
Oh,
So there
week
was a
12 and a half.
exactly. It's
Like,
like no one's gonna be able to split it up. They're gonna have to like just pay in full. No one's gonna be able to do that. Um, so I went up a mountain, like the foothills of the Appalachians, and I like, of course, had my county map that I opened up. I was like, that looks like where the mountain is, and try to get up to like the summit, and come to find out that like the road was closed, and I spent like an hour and a half trying to get up there. So I was like, well, damn it. Now I got an hour and a half back to my turf and I have nothing to show for it. It's
but
just like a
how was the view?
terrible. It was like all wooded, like there was
Oh, you couldn't even
no way
see.
to, no, it was terrible. Yeah. There was that, and then there's one that this was actually just a weird coincidence. I stopped somewhere this was my fourth summer in South Carolina. Really had to pee. There was a gas station along the interstate, so I like screw it, bathroom's right
Sure.
there. So I pop in there and I like this is when I was very on schedule that last summer, and I walk in there. There was a homeless guy. No joke. He had a Southwestern hat on, like the old fashioned, like just SW.
What?
Yeah. And I was like, I got to get back to work. It's a
What
sign.
in the hell?
Yeah, it was bizarre. And
I gotta get back to work.
that was legitimately my
This is
first
more
sign. I
not
was like,
the
this is a sign from
oh, man.
God that I have to get back to work.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. But again, it was just like I just had to pee. I like ran in. It was like a McDonald's like shell combined, and like I just ran
Oh,
in to
yeah.
use the bathroom and like ran back out. But there was a guy like having his meal at the, and I say he was homeless. I'm maybe making a stereotype there, but he yeah, had like all of his stuff with him, and then had this
He looked
hat on that caught my
transient.
eye. Yes, he was on the move. Um, but anyway, what's the next
That's
question? What
hilarious.
you got?
Favorite breakfast spot?
Waffle House.
Can't beat that. All right,
Yeah.
fair enough. Best follow day or favorite follow day?
Like of me following or someone following me?
Either one.
Either one. Hmm. I had a lot of fun with Wyatt Stevens following me, and then I had a lot of fun with the LSU guys that summer in Indiana. That was my best summer, and I had like people behind me every single day. I know I'm not answering the question very well, but it was
That's
just
fine.
like I kind of taught them how to have fun. We jumped in a lot of pools in our clothes that summer, and so
Yeah,
I
dude,
was
it's
like,
hot.
it is freaking
The
hot. And
Midwest
so
is hot in the summer.
yeah, oh, it was brutal. Again, it's not the Midwest; it's still the South.
Oh,
Um,
the South.
yeah, I'm gonna be that guy. So, yeah, they relied on me. I was the most experienced dealer outside of Sean Brifo and Elisa that summer, um, because we ended up like combining orgs, and I think Keisha was in that org too. But we had several of the LSU guys like they would follow me early on, and just had a lot in common with those guys, and we'd be laughing so hard throughout the day. So I credit those guys; they
Yeah.
were a great crew.
God, good follow days are so great.
Yeah.
And then the last one is favorite or more most memorable day of the book field.
I think it was 4th of July, my third summer. I, sh- I shared this on my last interview,
Mhm.
but here goes again.
Yeah.
So it was raining on the 4th of July, which is money. It is it was awesome, dude.
It's
So
as good as it gets.
yeah, there's nothing
Everybody's
better.
home and they're all inside.
Yeah, and it was like on a Thursday, so like it wasn't convenient enough for people to be like out of town, so they just like had the day off and had to go back to work on Friday. So I had a hard time getting my day started. I was one of those guys where it was just like, especially on a holiday, I didn't want to be like pounding on the door at 7:45 in the morning, like especially if it was raining, people are going to be asleep. So I was definitely, lightly knocking the first hour or so that day. Still started on time, but, could be debated. Uh from there, like caught my first family at 8:45, and at this point in the summer, I had moved south from Scottsburg to Jeffersonville, which is like basically metro Louisville. So it's across the river, but a lot of people commute across the river into Louisville from Jeff. So I moved on, but for the 4th of July, I went back up to Scottsburg after I had tore up that turf. And so I just caught up with all the families that I missed. And so I
Nice.
I hit stake by like noon, and I think it was like I did not get 30 demos that day, but I think I sat down with like 11 people and got like 9 custies. And what was so fun was like the first, I want to say like 8 sit downs all bought. And so
Bro,
if you
that's
do
crazy.
if you do the math, it was like 8 sit downs in a row buy. The next person said no. It was like talk about like seismic interactions. It was like, you're saying no? Really? Like, do you know?
Are you
Like, are
sure?
you sure? These are the these are the folks that
I wrote these
have,
names down today.
yeah, it was one of those just very surreal moments where I actually believed when I was just like, "You're not buying? Are you kidding me?" And
Yeah.
I had like one more customer that day and called it a night. Um, yeah, I will say I was like I've always been a rule follower. Uh, so it was like I tried to always get my 30 demos. I never really like quit early unless it was like a 9:15 and it just
Yeah.
like I don't
Doesn't
want to
make sense.
go knock on a cold door that I've never met and get the cops called on me.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that day it was like 27 demos, like 11 sits, and 9 customers, and I was like, "That's good. I'll live with
That's
that."
wild.
It was a good day, and it was on the 4th of July, and I like 4th of July is one of my favorite holidays already, and so I was going all out, like decked out in 4th of July gear, like socks like up to my knees. It was great. So yeah, that was probably my favorite day.
Hell yeah. Good shit. All right, that concludes the rapid fire questions. We got just enough time for a ponytail or two. And I guess, and as you know, but for people listening who maybe this is their first episode, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to tell a story about it could about a big customer that you had. Sometimes it's just the most memorable thing about Southwestern or closing thoughts or the time you almost shit yourself or did shit yourself. I don't know. Everybody's got a different one, but I'll leave it to you to see which one you want to close with.
Yeah, I don't want to share the same one as I did in the first episode. So like, I'm racking my brain. There's so many instances of like stories I could tell. Um, I will stick with my first summer, which was in Oxford, Mississippi, and
The
one of the
actual South.
families, the actual South. That's right.
They're
They keep it real down there. Um,
still the South.
yeah, they're still the South. So was in Oxford, and and technically I was in Water Valley, which is like if you could call it a suburb of Oxford. Um, I did run into a little PR that summer, and I think I was just like a little too naive to understand that like, oh, people do think this is a scam. Um, as the years went on, I kind of like learned how to navigate that a little bit better, but I was shell shocked that first summer, just not knowing how to manage it. So one of my favorite customers from all 4 summers, the Washington family, which I did mention in my first episode, they really helped me out. This is not why they were my favorites. They did drop the largest amount of money and purchase like the most books, but that's just a coincidence. They were just like really solid people. And frankly, what they did for me was behind the scenes. I didn't know this at the time, but they had posted on social media trying to like defend my honor and basically like ensure that those who thought I was a scam were not like spreading misinformation about me, which just was,
Bro,
I remember that first summer more than ever. Out of any of those 4 summers, um, I got really homesick. Like I'd say week 7 or 8. I think it was like the week before the 4th of July, and like knocked on my first door at like 7:45. I leave the driveway. Thankfully, no one answered the door, but like immediately just go back to my car and just start sobbing. I'm just like, I miss home. I miss my parents. Everything. Why the hell am I in like BFE, Mississippi? It was bad. And honestly, that was like kind of a pivotal point because it was just I never experienced any homesickness like that in the other 3 summers. But that one, it was like I was really struggling just with like the emotions of being away. Then dealt with like the PR, and then met this cool family. They were defending me, and other people within the community. I forget the name of this couple, but like husband worked at the bank. I think the mom, she was just like a favorite of the community. Like there was one family that moved into Water Valley, and she like unprompted like baked them a cake, and they like lived across town and like drove up, gave them the cakes, like welcome. I live way over there, and man,
wow,
I wish I could remember their
I
name.
mean,
I could drive back to their house probably, but I don't know. Like
It's
we're
amazing the people that you meet like that just give you hope in humanity again.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It really impacts you so much
Oh, dude. I like it
because they don't
is
have to
it
do that.
totally. And I think about it a lot now where it's more in line with my day-to-day interactions in terms of the type of person I want to be with others and just like not in a phony um not in a phony way where people are just like so overly positive that it's like nauseating and like kind of weird, but just like being so genuine that it's like you can come to me for anything if you need it, right? And it's I aspire someday that a kid knocks on my door and just be like, dude, come on in, or young lady, come on in. Like, what you got? You know, it's I'm glad they're still doing this, right? It's in part just because it was so formational for me to have that one person throughout my day while I was selling that was just like, I may be 1,000 miles away from home, but man, it's really nice just to feel welcome and not judged, but just feel like a normal human being. And I think that's like one of my biggest takeaways from selling is that like that is the overall vibe and aspiration I have is that no matter who I cross paths with in my life, I want to give them the best version of myself always. And doesn't matter who it is I meet. Just like I mentioned from my European trip, if it was the chairman of the board or the bartender taking my order, it's like you're gonna get the same Kevin. So that was a
Mm,
um, very formational part of my life, meeting some of those families in Mississippi.
dude, well said, sir. Look at you.
Thank you.
Look at you. I love it, dude. So good. Thank you for stopping by again, man. I'm excited for the future of what you're gonna learn and the growth you're gonna experience and
Same
finishing up
here.
with school, dude. Let me know when you keep in touch with me as far as like when you get out of school, when you graduate,
Hmm.
and then as you start developing up higher and like moving through the company. Then
Yeah, we'll be back in another 200 or so episodes.
yeah, I'll see you at 4:30 or something.
Isn't that crazy though? Like
So many.
2.5 years later, um, it was so funny because it was just like at that stage, I don't live far from there now. I live like literally across the bayou from where I was living in that episode, and I moved 3 times in 1 year. Uh, I guess let's see, this was a couple years ago now, but man, it's like I'm glad to be just more stable. So
You seem a lot
we-
more sure-footed, is what I would is what the word I was thinking.
I would agree. Yeah, I think I've just took me a while to kind of know the direction I was headed and having the confidence in myself to know I wanted to pursue it. And I think grad school has helped with that, being
Mm.
authentically me and not apologizing for it and being the undercover goofball that
Yeah,
Amber
dude.
Lee first gave me the tagline for. So, I've been trying to lean more into that and just enjoy life. And my 20s have been awesome. I've learned so much. And so yeah, I do think I am a lot more sure footed and just trying to enjoy it, man. And life's a great ride.
Hell yeah, I love that. Also, I will see you at the next Bizzler at the 3.5, I guess, because we gotta
Yeah.
add one.
I'll have graduated at that point. So yeah, it was I think we have class that weekend and we're only limited to how many classes we can miss. So I had to pass on that one again, but you'll see me soon.
That's all good. We'll see you when I see you. Hell yeah, man.
Yeah. Until
Hey,
next time.
that's right. And if you're ever in this part of the woods, the neck of the woods, let me know. I would love to host you
Yeah.
or show you around.
Thanks,
So
man.
hell yeah, man.
Yeah, give me a shout if you ever need anything.
Yeah, I will actually. I'll take you up on that. I like to take people up on that when they say that because
Sure.
that's what I hope that they do for me. Like I hope they take me up on it too. So, guys, this has been the Ponytails podcast. We've been with Kevin Flavin, and we'll see you guys on the next episode. By the way, it'll be season 9 finale, I believe. Is that right, Amy? I hope I'm saying that right. Sure. We'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, everybody.